Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Salesforce Ben webinar, this time in collaboration with Pendo. And today we're going to be going through measuring the ROI and value of an Agentforce implementation. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Agentforce by now. It's been a pretty Agentforce heavy year, but still there are adoption issues. And although Salesforce is signing a lot of customers, there are still quite a lot of customers who haven't yet made that leap into experimenting or doing a business case or actually implementing Agentforce end to end. So hopefully after today, we're going to give you a very good idea of what that looks like. And we've got a great panel discussion with you with some great guests that we'll go into in a minute. But just very quickly, if you haven't heard of Salesforce Ben, we are a media company in the Salesforce ecosystem. We have our website, salesforceben.com, which you can log on to. We're publishing about 20 posts a week, I think, across all different kind of roles. We got our newsletter, which you can sign up to and get news delivered to your inbox. Events like this one, but also physical events. I think the next one we'll be at is Dreamforce. We've got quite a lot planned for that. Our YouTube channel, and then also our podcast as well. So please check some of those out. And just to introduce myself, so my name is Ben McCarthy. I'm founder and CEO of Salesforce Ben. I've been in the ecosystem for 13, nearly 14 years now, I think. So yeah, super excited to host this discussion. And our first guest we're going to bring to the stage is Jake Wills, lead product manager at Pendo.
Hello, everyone. Jake Wills. I'm the lead product manager. Pendo, if you're not familiar, is a software experience management platform that helps you analyze and improve how customers and employees use software across Salesforce, your software, and Agentforce. We believe you can't measure agent ROI until you understand current work, where time goes, where friction lives, and which outcomes matter.
Great. Thank you so much, Jake. And next to the stage, an ecosystem legend, Ian Gotts.
Hi there. Thank you for the intro. Elements.cloud, we're all about making sure you understand your business processes, you understand how Salesforce is configured, but we've also now extended that so you can use it for finding agents and building agents. So it's important that we're well prepared as we move into this new agentic world. So excited to be here.
Thank you very much, Ian. And last but not least, the real MVP, Brandon Stauber.
Not sure if I'm the real MVP. Ben, thank you for the introduction. Jake, Ian, nice to see you guys. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever your time zone might be. My name is Brandon Stauber, and I am in our partner ecosystem at Salesforce. My role is to oversee our partner solution engineering team. And our goal specifically is helping our partners and then ultimately our partners' customers adopt and innovate on Agentforce and our other exciting technologies. Really looking forward to the conversation today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Do you have any other slides or? Yes, here we go. So here's our agenda. So as I said, today's going to be a panel discussion. We're also going to be having a Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions for our panel, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box or chat amongst yourselves in the chat box. We're going to be going through, firstly, the challenges of Agentforce deployment, adoption, and ROI, then thinking a bit about the ROI that needs to be proven for Agentforce. And because we're dealing with such a new technology, the game is kind of changing in terms of the old rules versus the new rules. Then building a business case for Agentforce, of course, very, very important if you are looking to go away from this webinar and present a case to your leadership team. And then finally, some quick actionable steps in the form of a pre-implementation checklist that you're going to need to have all the elements before you go into the implementation. So yeah, that is what we're going to be discussing. So let's get into it. So firstly, challenges of Agentforce deployment. So Salesforce has made many big claims about Agentforce, but quite a lot of companies have not started their AI transformation yet. And maybe, this could be because AI is the next new feature it's not just the next new feature to implement, it's completely changing how work happens and what's possible. So maybe adoption is lagging, not due to lack of interest, but due to clarity, what to expect and how to measure success and when to act. So Brandon, coming to you first. When companies are hesitating on Agentforce adoption, what's the most common internal blocker you see? And how can people on this call or leaders in a company reframe those conversations to drive progress?
Yeah, I think like probably the number one is really just this resistance to change and knowing where to start. And Ben, you mentioned in kind of introing the question, the concept is like, is this just a new feature? But in reality, this is an entirely new paradigm of how to work. So I think what we see and what I'm seeing is just this concept or perception that there's a lot of complexity in the implementations. There's a disruption of workflows. There's maybe skepticism about the ROI, a topic that we're going to be getting to in a few minutes. There's probably also, and I've heard this from a bunch of CEOs and other technical leaders at the partners that we're working with, is there readiness amongst the customers in terms of the data that's available and maybe the infrastructure that they have in place. So there's that. And then I think it's probably also mentioning that there's just a general fear of what agentic will have in terms of work displacement and kind of the ethical and kind of customer experience issues.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. It's often not one issue. It's often a few. And coming to you now, Ian, you've done a lot around agents, and it might be worth giving a very short intro to kind of Element's experience with agents, because I know you've got a lot, but you often talk about clarity comes before capability. So what are the signs that a company may not be ready to deploy agents just yet?
Okay, so the first thing is we've probably got 20 Agentforce agents live that we're running across the business. We've probably got 50 plus agents using other platforms as well. In fact, we have agents on our org chart. We think of them as digital employees. So actually, we've got a formal process for onboarding agents and for reviewing them. So we've really gone all in and think, okay, how are we actually going to make this work? So you asked the question, when is anybody ready? I mean, I think everybody is ready. It's very easy to go, oh, the data's not good enough. It will never be good enough. Oh, we haven't got our processes well enough defined. Well, I think the trick is pick an area, and I think Valar Afshar, who's the chief digital evangelist for Salesforce, said the way to get started is get started. Now, it doesn't have to be, don't pick the biggest process and go, we're going to fix order to cash. Let's pick an internal and maybe an employee-facing agent and a narrow scope and start to build those muscles. So I think the biggest blocker, I think, as Brandon said, is the fear of going, this is change and we're not sure how to get started. And you will never know unless you get started. We started on the agent journey probably 2 years ago when GPT first came out. And we've now built those muscles of how do you build agents. And if you don't get started on that journey with, and it doesn't have to be the whole company, pick a few people who are evangelists inside your organization who care about this, and then give them the space to make mistakes and start to experiment. And I think, Ben, you said at the beginning, some people are in the experimentation phase, some have got beyond that and are now in the full-on deployment. But you've got to get through the experimentation phase. And I think part of this webinar is actually having the discussions about how do you experiment, where do you get started?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's been discussion in the ecosystem for a while, kind of like, I've got technical debt and my data's not great, so maybe I won't implement agents. And I asked this guy, I can't remember the company, but a large company that implemented agents, kind of, where should people be focusing? And he was just like, well, you have to focus on both. You have to focus on AI and you have to focus on your existing setup. It's not do one or the other. It's has to be both, really. But Jake, coming to you next, to kick off deployment and adoption of Agentforce, where should teams be identifying use cases that deliver near-term value while building also an iterative roadmap, to deliver constant ROI?
Yeah, I think that builds off of what you and Ian were saying on starting experimentation, looking for some of your, very obvious use cases around case deflection. If you're looking at support, places where you can really get validation out of those experiments as you're starting, but then in parallel with those experiments, also looking really closely at your users, not just your action outputs, but understanding like how work is happening, especially non-linearly across Salesforce and adjacent apps. We design workflows linearly. Salesforce is great because it is not that restrictive, and work really flows in a lot of different areas and doesn't follow those strict kind of linear prescriptions that we design business processes around. So while you're experimenting, while you're earning your chops with how agents work, how you're going to measure, also looking at where is work really happening. And that's going to help you identify, layered over the business process, the human behavior, where are you going to get the most ROI and the most transformation from implementing agents. Looking at where does time get taken in work, where are there error hotspots or repetition or friction that are the areas that agents are really excellent at, and those are the things that you can then consider transformation and change to identify those use cases that are ultimately going to let you work towards a business case and ROI.
Can I jump in here, Ben? I think people confuse complexity with deployment risk. So you could pick a very complex agent which has got very low deployment risk. So an example for us is we've got like a 26-step 5-action process, which is all around coaching our sales reps. Okay. Relatively low deployment risk. It's focused on our sales team, it's coaching them. If it doesn't work exactly as expected, we're going to get great feedback. But you could then pick a very low complexity but very high risk agent, which would be, answering licensing questions on our company facing website. Nightmare. And I think people tend to mix up complexity with deployment risk, and we've got to pick low deployment risk agents to start with, which may have a relatively low ROI to start with, but we need the space to actually make some of those mistakes and get it right. Easy ones are, expenses policy. Okay, everybody needs to look at it. It's the policies are well defined. It's an easy agent to build. It's internally focused, so that's low deployment risk and low complexity, and it's an easy win. And we need to start thinking about looking at it through a slightly different lens than just, what's the greatest ROI? Yeah, we'll go for those later, but we've got to get moving, and we've got to get some of those. We've got to get a little bit of confidence and trust from leadership that this stuff is not as dangerous as everyone's making out.
Yeah, definitely. So, someone described it to me in terms of implementation steps is one, firstly, do your internal agents, then move to human in the loop, and then eventually move to fully autonomous. But at least the internal is semi-low risk, depending on what it is.
You mentioned, Ben, the human in the loop, and Jake, you kind of alluded to this as well. Is like, I think that there's a mindset as well. Is like, an agent is not a chatbot. This is actually, agentic is human agents working together. And so if you're looking at an overall business process and you're looking at how your customers are interacting, we should be thinking about ways to promote that collaboration between the human and the agent. And again, I agree in exactly what you're saying is we can have a deployment risk that is low and start to get our feet wet really easily.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Brandon. So moving on to our next section then, which is rethinking ROI, why Agentforce requires a new lens. Traditional ROI on software was fairly clear. It's reducing costs, speeding up tasks, increasing throughput. But as we've discussed, agents doesn't just automate steps, it transforms completely what is possible and how work happens. So although measuring ROI previously was never, I know Pendo exceeded it, but never completely straightforward. ROI with AI now includes value generated by humans working more effectively, entirely new workflows that didn't exist before, and also outcomes that really influence top line performance as well. So with that in mind, Brandon, when companies start thinking about ROI with Agentforce, where do you see them using the wrong framework, and what's the right way to shift that thinking over to the new standard?
Yeah, as I started off, I'd say this is really this human agentic experience is a massive paradigm shift. And so when we're typically focusing on, or when our partners and our customers are focusing on, they're starting with a cost first or maybe an automation only thinking mindset. And what we really need to do is start to shift away from that to start thinking about what are the ways to look at, more outcome driven outcomes or oriented perspectives. So how can we focus on new workflows, that hybrid collaboration we were just talking about? How do we find value beyond efficiency? We're talking about potential revenue growth, customer retention or attrit reduction, improved customer or even employee experiences. And of course, like we really have to also be thinking about what are the metrics measure. And they're not as easy as maybe some of the traditional metrics. So we have to be thinking a little bit out of the box. And I know we're going to talk about business case coming up. So those metrics are going to be a key to that business case overall.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And Jake, once teams shift their mindset about agent value and what's possible, how do they actually plan to measure that ROI?
Yeah, I think you start with KPIs. Those are the things that are going to show progress as you're starting down this experimentation to take those initial steps. But you need to start planning for those end outputs, as Brandon alluded to, starting with OKRs for the business and working backwards. And how are you going to prove those OKRs for the business, based on the transformation potential and the really outsized ROIs that your goals for Agentforce. So I think you first have to plan to instrument the agent. We're all waiting for Command Center to be released so that we can start getting familiar and have that tool to really understand the agent's actions and topics and measure that and be able to connect that to some of those initial KPIs. But you also need to think about measuring your human change, both your human behaviors before the human behaviors after that, and that's where really looking further out into business outcomes, things like revenue, retention, customer experience. How do you map those back to your workflow journey patterns, where there's rework and errors, time in step in your workflows. So planning for how you're going to have that insight from a quantitative perspective and a qualitative perspective, so that you'll understand how you're linking your agent interactions to downstream user behaviors and also see how those users are adapting upstream when they know those agents are part of the workflow collaborating with them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a nice reminder in a way that although everything is changing and what's possible is changing, KPIs, key business metrics don't change at all. Everything needs to work back from those. And Ian, coming to you, how should ROI be defined and perceived differently when evaluating Agentforce and AI versus the automation we're used to in, the classic digital transformation?
Well, I think first of all, for many people, they don't actually measure we're talking about having KPIs. Sometimes you don't even have the right KPIs because you're not measuring those things. That's the first thing. The second thing is agents. I think Brandon made the point. We may actually be able to redesign our processes so they work in a completely different way. There are things which humans weren't able to do that an agent can now do. And everything that I'm reading at the moment, from whether it's Accenture, Capgemini, McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester, everyone's saying you need to redesign your business processes and think about what you can now do and what's possible with an agent. A human won't read all 60 pages of the procedure every single time they look at a case. They won't look at 50 cases and evaluate them before they actually raise a new bug request. So I think the first thing is they're just going off the same metrics as going, can we make this faster, is not necessarily the right answer. I think that's your mess for less. We need to think about how we redesign it. And sometimes the metrics are, yes, it's time, but it may be accuracy. It may be actually a better quality result because you've now got access to a lot more data. And I'll give you, let's ground this in an example. We had a process which is where people raise cases because in Elements we do have bugs. But we may have 4 or 5 different customers all raise a case. That case could be, there could be lots of different reasons why the case gets raised. There's a 45-page document that we've written which helps people evaluate, or our customer support team evaluate those cases. They never used to read that all the time, nor would we expect them to. But an agent's really good at reading that. So the ability to have an agent read the case come in, read that document, and then produce the to-do list of these are the actions for the support team to go back and ask the customer for clarity again, that wasn't about speed. Yes, it was a lot faster, but it was actually improving the accuracy of the questions. We then had a second agent that would then take all of the cases related to a bug and then create the bug record. And it would look at the case, all the supporting emails, all the documents, all the transcripts. It would go and collect all of that, but then it would write up the bug in exactly the format that the development team wanted. So a couple of metrics that came out of that. Time to close a bug went from 23 days to 5.5 days. And that wasn't because the agent did it faster, because there was no back and forth all the time, going back with developers going, I don't understand what you're saying, back and forth. But the quality of the documentation, the bug documentation, went from 1 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. And the impact of that in terms of productivity. And then a really weird thing was our chief product officer said, this is an emotional benefit. Okay, just the time suck of knowing the documentation is wrong and reading it. He said it's just soul destroying. And I can't put a KPI on that, but I can in terms of productivity. So there are some slightly unusual things come out. And just to finish off this, I think the early stage experiments, don't put an ROI on it. Don't try and measure that first thing. Experiments need to be experiments. If they go wrong because it's experimentation. Yes, I think KPIs and an ROI is a level of maturity you're now starting to get into how to build agents and working out where. But those early ones, okay, there's no ROI. It's called learning. It's getting your muscles there. It's identifying people in the organization who are going to be the thought leaders in this. So don't put ROIs on the early experimentation. Absolutely, you need to start putting those metrics in when you're starting to mature.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ian. And yeah, I think the kind of big takeaway from this call is experimentation, because it's just like I'm an avid ChatGPT user, and I have been for, since it came out, but I'm still discovering new use cases for my flow of work, like every single day. Like something as simple as, if I've asked it to help me produce something, and then I go and I write something, just asking it to check it and see what it thinks, like for whatever I'm, it's just very simple things like that. But I just feel like you just have to get stuck in, and then, things become obvious.
Yeah, Ben, it's really interesting that whole kind of like tool adoption and then moving on to the next tool process that you start to do something, and then it just becomes part of your daily routine. And then you go on to the next thing, and you're starting again, experimenting with the next thing. And then it becomes like, oh my gosh, how did I, get through my day without having this tool available? So that maturity. And I think one thing we often forget, because we're all here in tech every day, is that most of the folks are nowhere near along the kind of the maturity level in terms of the adoption or exposure to the technologies that we are. So it's, we have to start with some small and simple experiments. And, I love the idea of reducing the ROI or eliminating if possible. I don't know if I've been able to effectively eliminate it in many of the conversations that I've had, but I will certainly try again.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we are reaching a bit of an inflection point, like kind of Salesforce aside with AI at the moment. Like I'm hearing so many stories of, my friends' parents that are starting to use it and stuff like that. And I think we're a bit of a tipping point at the moment. But yeah, so moving on to, I think second to last section, building a business case for Agentforce. So, Agentforce is freemium. Well, it is premium, no quotation marks needed. You can download it from Foundations. With Foundations, you can get started on it. But of course, any meaningful implementation is going to cost money. Agentforce is going to cost money. So, your leadership team, executive team are going to see a business case. So let's come to Jake first. So Jake, with a business case, what are the essential components that need to make up a business case that quantify agent actions and customer experience, while also showing long-term effects on the human work and the operating model? Bit of a long-winded question.
I think the business case, first of all, has to be iterative, along the lines of what we were just talking about, of accommodating for the experimentation and the learning, and showing the value of that, as well as your long-term vision, towards transformation. And I think within kind of each of those phases, as you evolve, as that maturity evolves, there's like two main pillars around quantitative and qualitative, and how you're going to make the business case of the results that you're looking for, and what's the value of that. So in a quantitative context, again, looking at what's the performance of the agents and how are we improving that and iterating on that, and the direct outputs of that. What are those human performance metrics that you're going to look at, and then also looking at the qualitative, like Ian spoke to, that emotional impact. There's you're not going to come out with numbers on that, but you can still measure sentiments and measure feeling, and that's both for your workforce, their experience, their effectiveness, and for your customer experience, and what are your outcomes for your customers. Even if your agents are initially employee facing, they should have that impact on what ultimately your customers are, and your revenue and your delight and your NPS. So, in an example of how Pendo got started, we're going through that experimentation phase, looking at sales operations and support tickets and ways that we can do that. And we're measuring that quantitatively, and we're measuring it qualitatively, like getting feedback from the people interacting with those agents. And of course, using Pendo's software experience platform to understand how their workflow might be changing. But our business case is looking at long-term transformation. How do we plan to move from CPQ to Revenue Cloud Advanced, and have Agentforce be part of some of those carrier workflows around CPQs and that. So our business case, comes with that iterative approach to get through learning and long-term transformation, but then it also touches on these quantitative and qualitative pillars, so that we have different ways to measure and be able to prove that value.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Jake. I once heard Salesforce ROI summed up in 3 nice bullet points, one being productivity, one being employee happiness, and customer happiness, which I thought was quite nice. So you can definitely think about those alongside everything else you've spoken about. Coming to Ian now. So Ian, how should teams decide whether an AI agent is the right fit for a use case in a redesigned business process? And once they do, how do they reflect process clarity and government and design effort in the cost side of the implementation?
Okay, so I think this is really important, because Jake came up with some great metrics for how you measure the benefits, but we also need to understand the cost, because the cost is not just the cost of the licenses. Actually, what we're seeing is organizations need to do a level of process redesign, and you need to obviously that takes time and effort, and you need to put that in. The issue, I think, with many Salesforce implementations, and we look at a lot, is that I don't think people have actually documented those business processes in enough detail. Okay, front office processes, it's easy. You find if they're not well documented and the application doesn't quite work, humans make up for it. They're the workarounds. I use a spreadsheet for that. I ask a friend. So there's all of that. Agents aren't very good at that. No, let me rephrase it. They are awful at that. That's where you get hallucination, where you get unreliability. So I think the first thing is people really need to actually dig in and understand there's a lot more detail required, a lot more clarity, you have to be a lot more explicit around the business process, about how things work, so that you can instruct those agents. I think we've been seduced into the ChatGPT. Oh, I gave it 3 lines and it wrote me poetry. Okay, that's cool, and I get that. But actually, we want this to go through and write up a case, or generate a bug record, or recommend the top 3 accounts. We want a lot more accuracy in that, and I think the business analysis discipline of really getting into it. Okay, how does this really work? If you've documented that well, we built an agent that will look at those process diagrams, and it will identify the agent use cases. It will actually work the business spec and say, I think this is a good agent example, and also this is a conversational agent versus an AI workflow agent. So if you've got that clarity of the business process, the agents drop out relatively quickly. If you don't have that clarity, people tend to go, oh, I could do an agent there. Oh, there's an agent maybe. And you start grabbing at agents rather than thinking about how it will actually improve the overall end-to-end process. We can learn a lot from fruit. Okay, what's this all about? Like a bunch of bananas. You don't see one banana in a bunch of bananas that's ripe and the rest aren't. They all ripen at the same speed. Okay, there's no point having an end-to-end process where you've optimized one bit and other bits are slow. You need to optimize the whole end-to-end to make sure it all works consistently. So you need to bring it all forward, which means you need to be designing that process and then working out every aspect where you put different agents in to move the whole process forward, rather than making one bit really good and then you end up just with a massive rate bottleneck because everything's gone really quickly to there and then everything after that's a bottleneck. So think about the whole end-to-end process, get clarity on that from a business process perspective. And obviously I'd suggest using elements, but then again, the agent design or agent piece is free. So there's no limit and there's no cost on that. But once you've got that clarity, then the agents will drop out of that more easily and you can start to see where the ROI is. But don't rush to build an agent just the way we rush to building Salesforce. Agents require you to do that. Redesign, rethink, re-engineer. And it's hard thinking. We're doers. We don't like to think, we like to do. And we need to try and rein that back and go, let's do decent design before we get started.
Yeah, it's a really important point because I mean, our kind of messages here, experiment, jump in, But when it comes to implementation, you obviously want to make sure you're focusing on the right business process.
Well, hang on, no. I didn't say jump in and experiment. Experiment means do those things in experimentation mode. So don't take from this. Experiment means we just get to play with agents. Experiment means experiment with what you should be doing just on a narrower scale. Okay.
Yep.
So even if you're experimenting, still go, it's narrow scope. We're going to think about this business process. We're going to do the design and then we'll build an agent. Experiment doesn't mean try and build an agent, see what happens, because we're not then doing what you should be. You're not experimenting on how you should be working in practice. The reason experimentation gives you the time is the time to change the way you work and do the design piece work properly. Think about governance properly. Think about build properly.
Yeah, very important. Thanks, Ian. Brandon, coming to you. So back to still talking about the business case. What elements must a final Agentforce business case contain to win executive approval? And how do you translate agent capabilities into concrete financial and strategic benefits?
Gosh, that's a great question. Obviously, every company has its own executive personalities. And so I think approaching with a lot of empathy and understanding what your executives are concerned about. If it's customer experience and your business case needs to have that front and center. If it's data quality, that is key. Human oversight. I was reading over the weekend this concept of a guardian agent that kind of oversees what's going on. And I think, Jake and Ian, given your process and insights that Pendo brings and elements.cloud bring, like there's certainly an element there that you could be thinking about what a guardian agent might do. So I think like looking at that at the highest level is key. Obviously aligning around kind of the strategic and financial benefits is crucial. So you want to have objectives, you want to have that scope defined. Ian, I love the idea of kind of that experiment. It's like the low blast radius, right? To start off and do something of a small blast radius to start. Understanding the cost categories. Someone mentioned it. It's not just the cost of the agent or the credit consumption. It's the time that it takes. It's the monitoring, the ongoing maintenance, and kind of ongoing improvement of it. Understanding the risk and risk mitigation efforts that are required. So that's super, super key, particularly as it relates to data. I think Salesforce has got a great story around our trust layer, and obviously with our deeply unified platform, it's an area where we have a distinct competitive advantage in that overall. And then kind of getting to that success metrics is super key, right? In some cases, reducing the average handle time and of a case is important, but in healthcare, that might not be the right metric. So I think it's really important to be thoughtful about what those metrics are. Are we talking about CSAT? Are we talking about NPS? Are we talking about cost savings? Are we talking about revenue uplift? Are we talking about attrit reduction overall? And I think thinking about how you can translate those actual agentic capabilities into benefits for the enterprise is really key. So again, it's revenue, it's cost efficiency, it's customer experience. I think the final thing I would say in terms of doing a business case is, because this is so new, that I would urge everyone here is to give a checklist to your stakeholders and your executives on how to think about evaluating the business case. Frame it for them. Because oftentimes, they're going to take it, from the traditional model. It's like, is this just an efficiency play? Is this just a cost play? We need to be thinking a little bit beyond that from an overall perspective. So put that into the structure, give them that framework for the evaluation of it, and I think you'll be off to the races.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brandon. I like the call out on guardrails and the kind of risk mitigation as well, because if executives haven't dived into AI yet, they might have seen the headlines about whatever that car dealership in the US giving a car away for $1 or something like that. So, of course, that's going to be top of mind for anyone implementing AI. Cool. Going on to our final section, we're going to do a bit of a Q&A at the end if we have some time. So please continue dropping in any questions you might got. But yeah, we're going to go into pre-implementation tactics and go through kind of 3 core areas around actionable tips you can take away. So coming to Ian first. Ian, before writing a single agent instruction, what concrete steps should organizations take to ensure iterations are fast and ROI data is easy to collect?
I think agent design is the most important thing. Agent architecture and design. So you got to think about, okay, what's the business process we think we are going to be applying an agent to? So have we got that clearly identified? Then we start. The thing about an agent is we need to give it some fairly explicit instructions. We're not building a workflow here, but you wouldn't take an employee and go, Brandon, you've just joined the company. You seem pretty bright. You're on customer support. It's like, well, what does that mean? We want to give you a job to be done, and that's quite a narrow scope. And I think architecting the agent's the first thing, which is, okay, a job to be done is, I want you to look at every case, look at the account, triage it, and then tell me the top 3 that I need to address. That's a job to be done. So I think the first thing is architecting the agents so they're tight enough. And then once you've got that, you can do an agent design, which then helps you drive and understand about how I would write the instructions or how I export the instructions. And I think it's that design piece is really important, because not only is it helping you understand how the agent works, but it's giving the stakeholders confidence that this is what the agent's doing. And I think that the challenge I'm seeing out in the marketplace is senior execs are going, well, I'm not sure I want to go live with that agent because I don't know what it does. But if you can explain, okay, here's a diagram, an agent diagram, this is what the agent's doing. You can see the feedback loops, you can see how it's working. Now you can put the testing we've done in the context of that. It's not a black box. You've got a better understanding. And I think that helps you get the agent deployed. The time to get an agent deployed is not the design and the build. It's often getting senior execs to sign off and go, let's do this. And that's why we're getting agents deployed so quickly, is because we're engaging them from the very beginning with that design process. But then we've got the diagram, which is the governance piece. So they've got some confidence that they've got control over the agent. And I think we haven't yet really spent enough time in thinking what governance really means. It's more than command center. Command center is a great start, but it's a lot more than that in terms of just giving companies confidence that this employee that we've now hired, this digital agent, we've got the governance around it to actually make sure we understand how to hire it, how to promote it, but then how to sack it if we need to, how to make it obsolete, and just that whole cycle. There's a bit more to this than just we built an agent, isn't this exciting? And I think senior stakeholders are worried about that, and we need to take them on that journey.
Yeah, definitely. Coming to Jake now around analytics. So prior to launching people's first agent, which analytics foundations are essential for capturing both agent performance as well as the downstream effect on the human users?
Yeah, I think that foundation starts with the design process that Ian was talking about, and there was a comment in the chat also about workshopping, whether you're talking with leadership, with the people who are doing the work right now. That's going to set your foundation that you're going to build your analytics and your measurement on top of, informing how you design, whether that is that very narrow, as Ian said, during experimentation, or your longer term vision. You're not going to be able to measure your agent outcomes, your human outcomes, and ultimately your ROI unless you understand your current work, and then understand how work is going to be done when you implement these changes. So I'm coming back to things I mentioned before: where time goes, where friction lives, which outcomes really matter for your OKRs. So I think an analytics platform like Pendo can give you lots and lots and lots of numbers, and those can be that quantitative and qualitative. But that can be a sea of data if you haven't set that foundation, or what you're going to measure as you are iterating through this kind of transformational change. So I think you really have to pair that. Agent performance data with the human data. There's Pendo's using a product we're building for agent analytics that will work really nicely with Command Center and provide that connection to how your agent performance connects to human performance and human workflows, so that you can connect all of that together. And so I think that's a more mature motion. That's looking at the long-term transformation, but starting to plan for that and factor that into what you can measure now, even if it's in that narrow experimentation phase, and how you're going to iterate your measurement broader and broader and broader as you're looking to prove your ROI more and more broadly for the business.
Yeah, 100%. I think those analytics are going to be so key to, if we've got, how many agents did you say you have, Ian? 30, 25?
We got, if I think about Agentforce agents, we got 20 plus live. We've got another 30 in pipeline that are being built. We've got probably 50 agents across the business of other types. I think back to Jake's point, the metrics are great, but having them put back in the context of, okay, how are they improving? And actually, this agent's doing a great job here, but actually now the bottleneck is there. So now that generates the business case for the next agent we need to go and build. So you can start looking up and down the supply chain or the value chain and going, okay, well, what's the next agent we should pick off? Because now we're getting some more benefits here. But you need the numbers then. And that's why Command Center and Pendo, having that stuff in context makes so much more sense. And again, it's a level of maturity, isn't it? Get the experimentation done, then get some operational and start getting those measurements. Then going, okay, well, how much better could we now get to?
Yeah, 100%. Sign me up for a demo when that's ready, Jake, because I'd love to see Pendo and Command Center working together.
Absolutely.
Cool. And finally, coming to Brandon. So on the Salesforce side, which kind of Salesforce org specific tasks most influence an agent's ability to deliver measurable results quickly?
Yeah, I'm going to get to the tactical in a second. I just want to come back to something that we've been talking about. This is a paradigm shift. So I think when we start thinking about adopting Agentforce, like maybe the first internal conversation really needs to be, how does Agentforce align to the overall platform vision that you have from your CRM implementation? How does it implement or impact or contribute creatively to those automation investments that you're making as an enterprise? And so thinking of it from that perspective, kind of a bigger perspective strategically, is super important. To get to some of the tactical things, it's no mystery that you need to have clean and structured data. And that gets down to the knowledge articles, making sure you're auditing the key Salesforce fields, making sure that you have unified customer profiles. A great plug for Data Cloud, right? To have a complete customer 360 or partner 360. having a command center dashboard, from the beginning, just understanding what is it that you're measuring, what did you build, and what is the impact, and what's the measurement going to be. So tracking those key metrics is key. Command center is great. That's coming up at Pendo. Obviously, you've got some great insights, and I think Ian, to be able to pull in kind of the process spots to understand where the next bottleneck might be. I think it's also really important to provide coaching playbooks to the folks that are using these agents and those that are impacted by them, so they understand what are the behaviors that are actually happening. I think, Jake, as you're looking at the behaviors of customers through, it's also what's the impact of those behaviors to the folks on the inside using Salesforce. If you have a really good insight and kind of visibility to those behaviors, you're going to have a much better lens on the ROI of the agents overall.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Brandon. That is all the questions. So thank you very much, guys. We will now go over to the Q&A. So let me just see what we've got here. So maybe more of a general one here. I think this came in from Andy. Yeah, Andy Brown, thank you. So he said, would you agree that there is more of a mindset shift than a technology one needed?
Can I pick that up to start with? Because I think that's, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about the implications of what a new agentic or an AI first company looks like. And you read, as I said, I referenced it earlier, you read any of the reports coming out, and everyone's saying the agentic world is not going to be, we'll take a few workflows or a few, and then we'll turn them into agents. I think some of this is actually fundamentally redesigning some of the activities that you do and saying, we've just hired this new employee, digital employee, who has actually got a bunch of superpowers. It will read a 200-page document. It will try things 15 different ways without getting hacked off and come back with the best answer. It will read through 700 records and then come back with an answer. And I think a lot of our existing business processes were optimized around the limitations of a human. And if you take those away and go, okay, if we didn't have those limitations, what could an agent do? But agents have got other limitations. So how do we then mitigate for those? And I think it is a mindset shift, because we've actually got to think about, okay, how would we come back at every single operation and go, how could this be better? And genuinely rethink it. Now, some things may not change, but we've got to come back with that thinking rather than going, I've got some technology, how shall I apply this? Because I think then you're only optimizing what you've currently got rather than rethinking what's possible. Now, the really cool bit is you've got Salesforce and the core data. You've got all those workflows that Salesforce does. It's easy to build that back end. What you need to do is rethink what the front end looks like, and actually whether it's an employee experience or a customer experience or a partner experience, and how much better could that be, and focus on that. And I think the mindset shift certainly for the customers we're talking about is spend a lot more time on the analysis rather than rushing into build. Give people the time to rethink things, have the debate, rather than going, we're behind the curve, build me an agent, because I need 4 agents by next week to make sure we're ahead. Right? Spend the time up front rethinking what you can do, what's possible, and then you will sprint ahead rather than running forward.
I love that, Ian, because it takes me to my product management background, and of course, many Pendo customers are product managers, and they look at their Salesforce implementations as their product, and it's comes back to those core product management principles of sometimes you need to spend more time thinking and designing than you do executing, and it's the same, avoiding the trap of product management of becoming a feature factory. How do I bolt this on? How do I bolt that on? How do I change this and add that? And taking a step back and really, thinking about rethinking what has value for the humans in your product, where are agents gonna do those things where they have superpowers, and really targeting where a product manager is trying to look, which is what are those end experiences and outcomes, whether that's your employees or your customers directly, or from the downstream outcomes in terms of business outcomes and OKRs.
Yeah, Jake, it's not lost on me that like we're often pressured as product managers to focus on what are like the first level questions that our customers are asking for. And we know that they're like, oh, I want agent availability. I want response times, which are all kind of like level one questions. And we need to be thinking a little bit beyond what those level one questions are as to how this human agentic experience is really going to change. I think another key element is, getting to like as an enterprise, the people behind the agents, what we need to be doing. And one of the things that as a leader of a team that I'm always thinking about is like, how are my team members using AI to redefine their work? And so, in terms of what are they doing and emphasizing that human agentic experience to deliver new value and new ideas and new capabilities in the work that they're delivering. And so there's like an upskill and training element that we need to be doing internally with our own companies to make sure that we're thinking about it beyond just those level one questions.
Can I jump in here? I think that I spend my whole time, I've always spent my time running programs and projects, and you're always trying to hook into, I know I want a behavior change from senior management. Where's the catalyst? How do I either create some catalyst that has, but this is a perfectly made one, which is a senior management going, wow, the agentic thing's happening, we need to get on board. This is your chance, if you're an admin, an architect, a business analyst, to hook onto this and go, if you want to do agents, give me the time and the space to do this properly this time, rather than forcing me to be the feature factory and go, look, just get this thing built. And you need to grab onto this and go, senior management don't know what the right answer is. You can help them give the right answer by finding all the Accenture article or the McKinsey article going, we've got to redesign our businesses. Let's do the proper business analysis. Give me the space to do that. Don't tell me I want 3 agents. Give me the space to do this stuff properly, and I will blow you away by what's possible. But if you force me to build you 3 agents, yeah, I could build one, and then you'll be disappointed. So I think this idea of finding the catalyst and senior management go, okay, let's do this properly this time, but give me the space to do this in a way, and just on a small scale, prove the pilot, show the benefits, and then let's roll that approach out, rather than forcing me to do something very quickly, which would be suboptimal.
Yeah, great. I hope Andy was taking notes, because there's a lot of great information there, but this is recorded as well. So, but Jake, a question for you. What makes Pendo suited to help organizations not just launch Agentforce, but also sustain adoption and scale them across the business as well?
No, not on mute. Yeah, that's, Pendo, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are a software experience management platform kind of across not only Salesforce, but all of your software, whether that's your employee software or your external facing software. And so we believe we're uniquely positioned to be able to provide that foundation that you need to prove that value across everything that you're doing. But whether that is in your early stages as you are experimenting and you're being very narrowly focused to take those first steps, or as you're looking more broadly to your transformation. So, we're investing heavily in, as I mentioned, agent analytics, and being able to really pull the human experience and the agent impacts together and tell that story. So, if we would love to talk to anyone who's watching today or watching the recording and be able to demonstrate more about how we do that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jake. I got one more question, and then I'll hand over to Jake to kind of finish us off with a final slide. But I think this was another. This was a question for Todd. It's quite long, so I'll try and summarize it. But I would love it if we could touch on the really important KPIs and metrics beyond just efficiency and cost, because I know we've spoken about it across this webinar, but I do think it's very important, and it's perhaps something that people aren't used to. So who wants to kick us off? KPIs that aren't just efficiency and cost.
One's got to be accuracy. I mean, there's no point having an answer really quickly if it's the wrong answer. It's accuracy is the first one, which might be a better written requirement spec. It could be a better answer around a more complete answer around a support. And getting to the correct answer more quickly, I think is one. The other one is customer friction. So the idea, if you had an agent that would happily know a bit more about me, so I don't start every conversation with, can you tell me who you are? What's your email address? What product have you bought from me? Well, you know that. If you know who I am, you know what I bought from, and you know all my background support cases. Why do I have to tell you that? You should know all that. Now, it may not be the agent, but it may be that's being served up to the customer support person, so they've already got that in front of them. And that means that we're taking away a lot of that customer friction. They're calls that I don't want to make. You've asked me to call you to update you on something. You've already got half this information. So I think customer effort score was something people used to measure all the time, which is different from customer satisfaction. It's like, how much effort is it to deal with you, especially when I don't want to. I'm happy buying from you, but now you want other stuff from me, and you already know that. So go and find it for me. So I think there are some different angles we should be looking at, which are based on having access to a lot more information and being able to validate that information, rather than you having to try and either an employee having to collate it, or you're asking for the customer to collate it for you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Anything to add, Jake or Brandon?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think there's an inclination to shy away from some of that because maybe it's hard to measure. So I think that leaning into qualitative, leading into sentiment is really important. Not shying away from that, learning how to quantify that, and ultimately tie that to business outcomes like increased revenue. It's great if there's less customer friction or customer effort involved in doing that. But how can you tie that through to that actually resulted in expansions? That actually resulted in reducing my churn or customer retention, and taking those to the next level, because that's the promised land of the business cases and the ROI that we're trying to build here. So that doesn't come easy. It comes with all the intention around design that we're talking about and understanding the broad implications, but also that measurement and evaluation and reporting and building trust so you can connect all those dots through to get to that promised land of what you want from your software.
Yeah, we have a million mechanisms for quantitative assessment and KPIs. We have so few for the qualitative. And I think our executives are often stuck on the quantitative because that's all the measures that we use across the enterprise. So as part of the business case, and I would say even like earlier, like as you're doing the jobs to be done workshops, is start to identify those qualitative measures that are impactful, have the conversations early, and you're not going to necessarily get it right out of the gate, but at least you have people are using the same language as they're talking about the impacts of these agents as they get deployed.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also like some, AI is going to change customer support and customer happiness for some businesses. So the ones that kind of don't make that shift, the gap is going to be massive between, companies you enjoy working with and others you don't. So yeah, super important. All right, well, we're nearly at the hour mark. So thank you very much for everyone for staying on with us, and to Ian, Brandon, and Jake. I'm going to hand over to Jake just for a second. I think we've got one slide just to finish up on that my colleague is going to put up, and we can do final words. Over to you, Jake.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, just a word of thanks from everyone at Pendo for spending the time today, and thanks to Ian and Brandon, and of course Ben for putting this on. Just to bring back up, Pendo is really, as our founder and CEO Todd says, on a mission to improve the world's experience with software, and we have tools for quantitative, qualitative, visual, and sentiment to measure those things and help you get started. So if you'd like to have a conversation and learn more, there'll be a link in the chat, and we thank everybody for coming today.
Great. Thanks so much. So yeah, just to finish off then, I mean, thank you again for everyone that's joined today. We had a massive reaction to this topic. I think it's no surprise, really. It's use cases, implementation, Agentforce ROI is just such an important topic at the moment. So yeah, thank you very much for joining, and to our panel. Any final words, Brandon?
No, just thank you, Ben, for hosting us today. Jake, Ian, great to be on a virtual call with you, and just really enjoyed it today.
Thank you very much. And Ian?
The way to get started is get started. Use this as the catalyst for action. Yeah,
thank you. And finally, Jake?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Ian more, and I just want to thank you all for the honor of the discussion today and everything that we talked through. It was a great experience. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks everyone for attending. See you soon.